Hey folks, Linguisamo here. First of all, before I continue, I would actually like to extend my apologies to those who actually are following, and that it's been 2 months since my last video in the series of Chapter 1, Part 1. This will be Chapter 1, Part 2. So, basically, life happened and the holiday season. So, without further ado, I shall continue with Part 2 of Chapter 1. The goddess, swift to high Olympus flies, and joins the sacred senate of the skies. Nor yet the rage his boiling breast forsook, which thus redoubling on Atrides broke. O monster, mixed of insolence and fear, thou dog in forehead, but in heart a deer! When wert thou known in ambushed fights to dare, or nobly face the horrid front of war? 'Tis ours, the chance of fighting fields to try, thine to look on and bid the valiant die. So much 'tis safer through the camp to go, and rob a subject, than to spoil a foe. Scourge of thy people, violent and base, sent to Jove's anger on a slavish race, who, lost to sense of generous freedom past, are tamed to wrongs, or this had been thy last. Now by this sacred sceptre hear me swear, which nevermore shall leaves and blossoms bear, which, severed from the trunk, as I from thee, on the bare mountains left its parent tree. This sceptre, formed by tempered steel to prove, an ensign of the delegates of Jove, from whom the power of laws and justice springs, tremendous oath, and violate to kings. By this I swear, when bleeding Greece again shall call Achilles, she shall call in vain. When flushed with slaughter, Hector comes to spread the purple shore with mountains of the dead, then shalt thou mourn the affront thy madness gave, forced to deplore when impotent to save. Then rage and bitterness of soul to know this act has made the bravest Greek thy foe. He spoke, and furious hurled against the ground his sceptre starred with golden studs around. Then sternly silent sat, with like disdain the raging king returned his frowns again. To calm their passion with the words of age, slow from his seat arose the Pylian sage, experienced Nestor in persuasion skilled, words sweet as honey from his lips distilled. 2 generations now had passed away, wise by his rules and happy by his sway. 2 ages o'er his native realm he reigned, and now the example of a third remained. All viewed with awe the venerable man, who thus with mild benevolence began. What shame! What woe is this to Greece? What joy to Troy's proud monarch and the friends of Troy, that adverse gods commit to stern debate the best, the bravest of the Grecian state. Young as ye are, this youthful heat restrain, nor think your Nestor's years and wisdom vain. A godlike race of heroes once I knew, such as no more these aged eyes shall view. Lives there a chief to match Pirithous' fame, Dryas the bold, or Cineas' deathless name. Theseus, endued with more than mortal might, or Polyphemus, like the gods in fight. With these of old, to toils of battle bred, in early youth my hardy days I led, fired with a thirst which virtuous envy breeds, and smit with love of honorable deeds. Strongest of men, they pierced the mountain boar, ranged the wild deserts red with monsters' gore, and from their hills the shaggy centaurs tore. Yet these with soft persuasive arts I swayed. When Nestor spoke, they listened and obeyed. If in my youth even these esteemed me wise, do you, young warriors, hear my age advise. Atrides, seize not on the beauteous slave, that prize the Greeks by common suffrage gave. Nor thou, Achilles, treat our prince with pride. Let kings be just, and sovereign power preside. Thee, the first honors of the war adorn, like gods in strength, and of a goddess born. Him awful majesty exalts above the powers of earth and sceptred sons of Jove. Let both unite with well-consenting mind, so shall authority with strength be joined. Leave me, O king, to calm Achilles' rage. Rule thou thyself as more advanced in age. Forbid it, gods! Achilles should be lost, the pride of Greece and bulwark of our host. This said, he ceased. The king of men replies, thy years are awful, and thy words are wise, but that imperious, that unconquered soul, no laws can limit, no respect control. Before his pride must his superiors fall, his word the law, and he the lord of all. Him must our hosts, our chiefs, ourself obey. What king can bear a rival in his sway? Grant that the gods his matchless force have given, has foul reproach a privilege from heaven? Here, on the monarch's speech Achilles broke, and furious thus, and interrupting, spoke, tyrant, I well deserved thy galling chain, to live thy slave, and still to serve in vain. Should I submit to each unjust decree? Command thy vassals, but command not me. Seize on Briseis, whom the Grecians doomed, my prize of war, yet tamely see resumed. And seize secure, no more Achilles draws his conquering sword in any woman's cause. The gods command me to forgive the past, but let this first invasion be the last. For know thy blood, when next thou darest invade, shall stream in vengeance on my reeking blade. At this they ceased, the stern debate expired, the chiefs in sullen majesty retired. Achilles with Patroclus took his sway, where near his tents his hollow vessels lay. Meantime Atrides launched with numerous oars a well-rigged ship for Chrysa's sacred shores. High on the deck was fair Chrysa's placed, and sage Ulysses with the conduct graced. Safe in her sides the hecatomb they stowed, then swiftly sailing, cut the liquid road. The host to expiate next the king prepares, with pure lustrations and with solemn prayers. Washed by the briny wave, the pious train are cleansed, and cast the ablutions in the main. Along the shore whole hecatombs were laid, and bulls and goats the Phoebus' altars paid. The sable fumes in curling spires arise, and waft their grateful odors to the skies. The army thus in sacred rites engaged, Atrides still with deep resentment raged. To wait his will 2 sacred heralds stood, to Lithobaeus and Eurybates the good. Haste to the fierce Achilles' tent, he cries, thence bear Briseis as our royal prize. Submit he must, or if they will not part, ourself in arms shall tear her from his heart. The unwilling heralds act their lord's commands. Pensive they walk along the barren sands. Arrived, the hero in his tent they find, with gloomy aspect on his arm reclined. At awful distance long they silent stand, loath to advance and speak their hard command. Decent confusion this the godlike man perceived, and thus with accent mild began. With leave and honor enter our abodes, ye sacred ministers of men and gods. I know your message, by constraint you came, not you, but your imperious lord I blame. Patroclus haste, the fair Briseis bring, conduct my captive to the haughty king. But witness, heralds, and proclaim my vow, witness to gods above and men below. But first and loudest to your prince declare, that lawless tyrant whose commands you bear, unmoved as death Achilles shall remain, though prostrate Greece shall bleed at every vein. The raging chief in frantic passion lost, blind to himself and useless to his host, unskilled to judge the future by the past, in blood and slaughter shall repent at last. Patroclus now the unwilling beauty brought, she, in soft sorrows and in pensive thought, passed silent as the heralds held her hand, and have looked back, slow moving o'er the strand. Not so his loss the fierce Achilles bore, but sad, retiring to the sounding shore. O'er the wild margin of the deep he hung, that kindred deep from whence his mother sprung. There bathed in tears of anger and disdain, thus loud lamented to the stormy main. O parent goddess, since in early bloom thy son must fall by too severe a doom, sure to so short a race of glory born, great Jove in justice should this span adorn. Honor and fame at least the Thunderer owed, and ill he pays the promise of a god. If yon proud monarch thus thy son defies, obscures my glories, and resumes my prize. Far from the deep recesses of the main, where aged ocean holds his watery reign, the goddess mother heard the waves divide, and like a mist she rose above the tide. Beheld him mourning on the naked shores, and thus the sorrows of his soul explores. Why grieves my son? Thy anguish let me share, reveal the cause and trust a parent's care. He deeply sighing said, to tell my woe is but to mention what too well you know. From Thebe, sacred to Apollo's name, Etienne's realm, our conquering army came, with treasure loaded in triumphant spoils, whose just division crowned the soldiers' toils. But bright Chryses, heavenly prize, was led by votes selected to the general's bed. The priest Phoebus sought by gifts to gain his beauteous daughter from the victor's chain. The fleet he reached, and lowly bending down, held forth the scepter and the laurel crown. Entreating all, but chief implored for grace, the brother kings of Atreus' royal race. The generous Greeks their joint consent declare, the priest to reverence and release the fair. Not so Atrides, he, with wonted pride, the sire insulted and his gifts denied. The insulted sire, his god's peculiar care, to Phoebus prayed, and Phoebus heard the prayer. A dreadful plague ensues, the avenging darts incessant fly, and pierce the Grecian hearts. A prophet then, inspired by heaven, arose, and points the crime, and thence derives the woes. Myself the first assembled chiefs incline, to avert the vengeance of the power divine. Then rising in his wrath, the monarch stormed. Incensed he threatened, and his threats performed. The fair Chryses to her sire was sent, with offered gifts to make the god relent. But now he sees Briseis' heavenly charms, and if my valor's prize defrauds my arms, and if my valor's prize defrauds my arms, he defrauds the votes of all the Grecian train, and service, faith, and justice plead in vain. But, goddess, thou thy suppliant son attend, to high Olympus' shining court ascend, urge all the ties to former service owed, and sue for vengeance to the thundering god. Oft hast thou triumphed in the glorious boast, that thou stoodst forth of all the ethereal host, when bold rebellion shook the realms above, the undaunted guard of cloud compelling Jove. When the bright partner of his awful reign, the warlike maid and monarch of the main, the traitor gods by mad ambition driven, dost threat with chains the omnipotence of heaven. Then, cold by thee, the monster Titan came, whom gods Briareus, men Aegean name. Through wandering skies, enormous stalked along, not he that shakes the solid earth so strong. With giant pride, at Jove's high throne he stands, and brandished round him all his 100 hands. The affrighted gods confessed their awful lord, they dropped the fetters, trembled, and adored. This, goddess, this to his remembrance call, embrace his knees at his tribunal fall, conjure him far to drive the Grecian train, to hurl them headlong to their fleet and main, to heap the shores with copious death, and bring the Greeks to know the curse of such a king. Let Agamemnon lift his haughty head o'er all his wide dominion of the dead, and mourn in blood that ere he durst disgrace the boldest warrior of the Grecian race. Unhappy son, fair Thetis thus replies, while tears celestial trickle from her eyes. Why have I borne thee with a mother's throes, to fates averse and nursed for future woes? So short a space the light of heaven to view, so short a space, and filled with sorrow too. O might a parent's careful wish prevail! Far, far from Iliad should thy vessels sail, and thou from camps remote the danger shun, which now, alas, too nearly threats my son. What I can to move thy suit I'll go, to great Olympus crowned with fleecy snow. Meantime, secure within thy ships, from far behold the field, not mingle in the war. The sire of gods and all the ethereal train, on the warm limits of the farthest main, now mix with mortals, nor disdain to grace the feasts of Ethiopia's blameless race. 12 days the powers indulge the genial rite, returning with the 12th revolving light. Then will I mount the brazen dome, and move the high tribunal of immortal Jove. The goddess spoke, the rolling waves enclose. Then down the steep she plunged from whence she rose, and left him sorrowing on the long lonely coast, in wild resentment for the fair he lost. In Chrysa's port now sage Ulysses rode, beneath the deck the destined victim stowed. The sails they furled, they lash the mast aside, and drop their anchors, and the pinnace tied. Next, on the shore their hecatomb they land, Chrysa's last descending on the strand. Her, thus returning from the furrowed main, Ulysses led to Phoebus' sacred fane, where at his solemn altar, as the maid he gave to Chryses, thus the hero said, Hail, reverend priest, to Phoebus' awful dome, a suppliant I from great Atrides come. Unransomed, here receive this spotless fare, accept the hecatomb the Greeks prepare. And may thy God, who scatters darts around, atoned by sacrifice, desist to wound. At this the sire embraced the maid again, so sadly lost, so sadly sought in vain. Then near the altar of the darting king, disposed in rank their hecatomb they bring, with water purify their hands, and take the sacred offering of the salted cake. While thus with arms devoutly raised in air, and solemn voice, the priest directs his prayer. God of the silver bow, thy ear incline, whose power encircles killeth the divine, whose sacred eye thy Tenedos surveys, and gilds fair Chrysa with distinguished rays. If, fire to vengeance thy priest's request, thy direful darts inflict the raging pest. Once more attend, avert the wasteful woe, and smile propitious, and unbend thy bow. So Chryses prayed. Apollo heard his prayer, and now the Greeks their hecatomb prepare. Between their horns the salted barley threw, and with their heads to heaven the victims slew. The limbs they sever from the enclosing hide, the thighs, selected to the gods, divide. On these, in double calls involved with art, the choicest morsels lay from every part. The priest himself before his altar stands, and burns the offering with his holy hands. Pours the black wine, and sees the flames aspire. The youth with instruments surround the fire. The thighs thus sacrificed and entrails dressed, the assistants part, transfix, and roast the rest. Then spread the tables, the repast prepare. Each takes his seat, and each receives his share. When now the rage of hunger was repressed, with pure libations they conclude the feast. The youths with wine, the copious goblets crowned, and pleased, dispense the flowing bowls around. With hymns divine the joyous banquet ends, the paeans lengthened till the sun descends. The Greeks, restored, the grateful notes prolong. Apollo listens, and approves the song. 'Twas night, the chiefs beside their vessel lie, till rosy morn had purpled o'er the sky. Then launch, and hoist the mast. Indulgent gales, supplied by Phoebus, fill the swelling sails. The milk-white canvas belling as they blow, the parted ocean foams and roars below. Above the bounding billows swift they flew, till now the Grecian camp appeared in view. Far on the beach they haul their bark to land. The crooked keel divides the yellow sand. Then part, where stretched along the winding bay the ships in tents and mingled prospect lay. But raging still, amidst his navy sat the stern Achilles, steadfast in his hate, nor mixed in combat, nor in council joined, but wasting cares lay heavy on his mind. In his black thoughts revenge and slaughter roll, and scenes of blood rise, dreadful in his soul. 12 days were past, and now at the dawning light the gods had summoned to the Olympian light. Jove, first descending from the watery bowers, leads the long order of ethereal powers, when, like the morning mist in early day, rose from the flood the daughter of the sea, and to the seats divine her flight has dressed. There, far apart and high above the rest, the Thunderer sat, where old Olympus shrouds his 100 heads in heaven and props the clouds. Suppliant the goddess stood, one hand she placed beneath his beard, and one his knees embraced. If e'er, O father of the gods, she said, my words could please thee, or my actions aid, some marks of honor on my son bestow, and pay in glory what in life you owe. Fame is at least by heavenly promise due to life so short and now dishonored too. Avenge this wrong, O ever just and wise. Let Greece be humbled and the Trojans rise, till the proud king and all the Achaean race shall heap with honors him they now disgrace. Thus Thetis spoke, but Jove in silence held the sacred counsels of his breast concealed. Not so repulsed, the goddess closer pressed, still grasped his knees, and urged the dear request. O sire of gods and men, thy suppliant hear. Refuse or grant, for what has Jove to fear? Or, declare, of all the powers above, is wretched Thetis least the care of Jove? She said, and sighing, thus the god replies, who rolls the thunder o'er the vaulted skies. What hast thou asked? Ah, why should Jove engage in foreign contests and domestic rage, the gods' complaints and Juno's fierce alarms, while I, too partial, aid the Trojan arms? Go, lest the haughty partner of my sway with jealous eyes thy close access survey, but part in peace, secure thy powers, thy prayers sped, witness the sacred honors of our head, the nod that ratifies the will divine, the faithful, fixed, irrevocable sign. This seals thy suit, and this fulfills thy vows. He spoke, and awful bends his sable brows, shakes his ambrosial curls, and gives the nod, the stamp of fate and sanction of the god. High heaven with trembling the dread signal took, and all Olympus to the center shook. Swift to the seas profound the goddess flies, Jove to his starry mansions in the skies. The shining senate of the immortals wait the coming god, and from their thrones of state arising silent, wrapped in holy fear, before the majesty of heaven appear. Trembling they stand, while Jove assumes the throne, all but the gods' imperious queen alone. Late had she viewed the silver-footed dame, and all her passions kindled into flame. Say, artful manger of heaven, she cries, who now partakes the secrets of the skies? Thy Juno knows not the decrees of fate, in vain the partner of imperial state. What favorite goddess than those cares divides, which Jove in prudence from his consort hides? To this the Thunderer, seek not thou to find the sacred counsels of Almighty Mind. Involved in darkness likes the great decree, nor can the depths of fate be pierced by thee. What fits thy knowledge, thou the first shalt know, the first of gods above, and men below. But thou, nor they, shall search the thoughts that roll deep in the close recesses of my soul. Full on the sire, the goddess of the skies, rolled the large orbs of her majestic eyes, and thus returned, austere Saturnius, say, from whence this wrath, or who controls thy sway? Thy boundless will for me remains in force, and all thy counsels take the destined course. But 'tis for Greece I fear, for late was seen in close consult the the silver-footed queen. Jove to his Thetis nothing could deny, nor was the signal vain that shook the sky. What fatal favor it has the goddess won to grace her fierce, inexorable son? Perhaps some Grecian blood to drench the plain, and glut his vengeance with my people slain. Then, thus the god, O restless fate of pride, that strives to learn what heaven resolves to hide. Vain is the search, presumptuous and abhorred, anxious to thee, and odious to thy lord. Let this suffice, the immutable decree no force can shake. What is that ought to be? Goddess, submit, nor dare our will withstand, but dread the power of this avenging hand. The united strength of all the gods above in vain resists the omnipotence of Jove. The thunderer spoke, nor durst the queen reply. A reverent horror silenced all the sky. The feast disturbed, with sorrow Vulcan saw his mother menaced, and the gods in awe. Peace at his heart, and pleasure his design, thus interposed the architect divine. The wretched quarrels of the mortal state are far unworthy, gods, of your debate. Let men their days in senseless strife employ. We in eternal peace and constant joy. Thou, goddess mother, with our sire comply, nor break the sacred union of the sky, lest, roused to rage, he shake the blessed abodes, launch the red lightning, and dethrone the gods. If you submit, the thunderer stands appeased. The gracious power is willing to be pleased. Thus Vulcan spoke, and rising with a bound, the double bowl with sparkling nectar crowned, which held to Juno in a cheerful way. Goddess, he cried, be patient and obey. Dear as you are, if Jove his arm extend, I can but grieve, unable to defend. What god so daring in your aid to move, or lift his hand against the force of Jove? Once in your cause I felt his matchless might, hurled headlong down from the ethereal height, tossed all the day in rapid circles round, nor till the sun descended, touched the ground. Breathless I fell, in giddy motion lost. The Cynthians raised me on the Lemnian coast, he said, and to her hands the goblet heaved, which with a smile the white-armed queen received. Then to the rest he filled, and in his turn each to his lips applied the nectared urn. Vulcan with awkward grace his office applies, and unextinguished laughter shakes the skies. Thus the blessed gods the genial day prolong in feasts ambrosial and celestial song. Apollo tuned the lyre, the muses round with voice alternate aid the silver sound. Meantime the radiant sun to mortal sight, descending swift, rolled down the rapid light. Then to their starry domes the gods depart, the shining monuments of Vulcan's art. Jove on his couch reclined his awful head, and Juno slumbered on the golden bed. Thus ends chapter 1. Chapter 2 shall soon follow.